Welcome back, guys. So today we're going to do a very fun experiment. So we all know from a security perspective that it is never a good idea to expose our servers directly to the internet. From a security perspective, we know that is a big no-no. But one of the best ways to actually prove that it's a bad idea is to deploy a thing called a honeypot. So that will be like a server with several ports that are open, and we will let attackers attack that server with the idea to see how many attackers are there, what attacks are they trying against our servers. So that being said, let's take a look at how we can deploy a honeypot in Azure. Alright, so we're back on the PC. So today we're going to focus on honeypots. So a honeypot is pretty much a vulnerable application to see if anyone malicious wants to connect to that application, and to see if they want to do anything malicious, if they have malicious intent. So that being said, the application that we want to have a look at today is called TPOT. So TPOT is a combination of multiple honeypots, and it's run on a virtual machine. So that being said, let's open up GitHub and have a look at this open source technology. Alright, so now we've got GitHub open here, so it is telecom-security/TPOT, and let's have a look here. So here we can see all of the honeypots that form part of TPOT, right? So we have a few, good ones here. For example, we have Cowrie, which is normally, used for SSH. We have Dionea. We have, even ElasticPort, which is quite cool. We've got a few ones here, and also, an RDP one to see, if anyone wants to do any RDP related attacks. And one of the other cool things that I want to mention here is that this application makes use of Kibana, for a dashboarding format. So you can have a look at, nice graphs and charts, which is quite interactive, from a Kibana perspective, which I think is quite cool. So in order for us to actually deploy this, what we'll need to do is we will have to create a Linux virtual machine. And today we're going to choose our platform, which is Azure. We're going to create this Debian virtual machine in Azure. We're going to deploy this application to it. And then we're going to change some firewall rules. So we're going to open up this application to the internet. So usually this would not be best practice if it was an enterprise application, but seeing that this is a honeypot, we want to see how many malicious attacks or attempts we can actually gather on this virtual machine. So that is the what we're going to do today. So let's head over to the Azure portal. Alright, so now that we're in the Azure portal, let's go ahead and create a new Debian virtual machine. So let's go ahead and create a resource. We're going to search here for Debian. We're going to choose Debian 10 and create. So now we can choose our subscription, which is going to be demo. Our resource group is going to be OSINT for open source technology. The virtual machine name, what we're going to call this is just TPOT-VM. We're going to deploy it to the East US region with no additional availability options. The image is going to be Debian, and what we can do is we can deploy this with 4 virtual CPUs and 16 gigs of RAM. So by default, this application is quite memory intensive because it hosts multiple honeypots. So, they recommend minimum 8 gigs of RAM, so you can play around with it. Your mileage may vary, but for this demo, I just want it fast and quick. So I'm going to just say 4 virtual CPUs, 16 gigs of RAM, run it for a while and see, what attack attempts we actually get, onto this virtual machine. All right, so to administer this, what we're going to do is I'm not going to use an SSH key pair. I'm just going to use this for demo purposes, just use a username and password, because we're going to trust this VM, in any case. So we're going to give it a username and a password. Here, I'm going to say next. So for storage, we're just going to use a standard SSD for now. I'm going to say next under networking. So we're going to use the OSINT VNet, which is already existing. That's cool. We're going to create a new public IP for this virtual machine. And we already have a TPOT network security group, which is Azure's, free version of a, 5-tuple firewall. All right, we're going to say next. Nothing that we're going to choose here. We're just going to choose the standard defaults. And we're just going to have a review of all of the configs here, just like a final validation from an Azure perspective. And once that is done, which it should pass any second, it will just show us review of all of the settings, and it's going to cost us 350, which is the local currency for South Africa, to run this virtual machine per hour. We've got some information there, just as a review of all of the info here. So let's go ahead and create this virtual machine. All right, so now that our virtual machine has been created, we can go to the resource. And the first thing that we will want to do is just confirm that we've got a public IP address here, and we've got a local IP address as well, and the virtual machine is in a running state. So now the first thing that we'll need to do is we'll have to go and connect via SSH to this Linux virtual machine. All right, so what we want to do now is we're going to go under settings, we're going to choose networking in order for us to SSH to this virtual machine. So what we're going to choose is under source, we're going to say IP address, and I'm going to add in my public IP address. So I'm just going to do a what's my IP. I'm going to paste in my public IP address for now. The destination we can leave as any, and the custom service port is going to be 22 on TCP, and we're going to call this SSH-REA. So we're going to add that. And once this rule is in effect, we should be able to SSH to this virtual machine to actually do the TPOT configuration. So what we can do, so long as let's bring up the Windows terminal. Let's just go ahead and grab the public IP of this virtual machine. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to minimize here, make this a bit bigger. What we're going to do is we're going to say SSH, we're going to say the username at the public IP address. And there we go. So let's just say yes. We want to allow it. And I'm just going to paste in our password. And we're in. Awesome. So now what we want to do is we want to get, just want to say sudo su. So for those of you that are not familiar with Linux, that is just like an administrator mode. So all right, so now we're going to run everything as an admin. All right, so what we want to do now is we're going to just run some basic updates. What we want to do is we want to say install update, and I have to say apt install update and apt upgrade, and we're just going to do a switch with yes. Okay, so apparently it's just complaining about that, but I think we're good for now. So what we want to do next is we want to install the Git functionality, because we want to pull from a GitHub repo. So what we will do is we'll say apt install Git, and we're going to say yes. And this should install, quite quickly. Awesome. So now that Git has been installed, let's just clear the screen. And what we want to do now is we're going to type in a command to pull from the GitHub repo. So just want to say clone it from our GitHub repo, which is the TPOT CE repo. And now what we want to do is with this command, we're going to say, okay, well, go to this location and, execute the install.sh file, with the type as a user. So let's go and say yes. And now this is going to take a while because it has to go pull all of the information and install all of the information, from all of the applications that is part of TPOT. So we're just going to let this run for a while. And once it's done, we can configure, the additional configuration. All right, so now that TPOT has, finished installing all of the different honeypots and it's rebooting the virtual machine. So what we then can do now is we can browse over to the virtual machine. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we'll need is we have to go to the Azure portal. All right, so let's copy this public IP address. And so there's two port numbers that we can use to log into this virtual machine. So the first is 64294. And this port range is used for, the virtual machine administration. So let's log in here and show you guys how that looks. So in order to do that, you will see it's Debian. So, it's the host operating system. And let's get that here. Let's get our password that I have here. And once we're inside, we can just see it's a normal administration portal, right? So we can see the virtual machine name here is anonymous tier. And, these host names are generated every single time differently, based on, when you create a virtual machine, which is quite cool. And we've got normal stats here, for example, CPU usage, memory usage, disk, input, output, and also network traffic, right? So this is just for, having a look at, the host operating system to see if there's, anything funky going on. But that's not the goal of this, right? So the goal of this is to have a look at, the application itself to see, if we're getting attacked. In order to do that, we will have to log into, the dashboard side, which is the Kibana side of TPOT. And instead of using 294, we're going to use 64297. And just as an FYI, if you guys don't see this page and if you just see a 400 Nginx error, just make sure to use HTTPS and not HTTP alone. Otherwise, it will not do a redirect automatically. So been there, done that, just make sure you're using HTTPS. So now we have to log into the application. So let's just say Rian. And I'm logging into the application. All right, so now we've got a few things here, but there's only two things of interest here. So the first one is Kibana. So let's have a look at Kibana. So that's the main thing. So it's running on Elastic. So Kibana is used for the visualization side of things, which is, quite cool for dashboards. It has some cool stuff, and they want us to help improve the Elastic Stack. I'm just going to say disable for now, dismiss, and it gives us a whole list of things here. But we want to have a look at TPOT, so we want to have a look at TPOT, and TPOT is basically just, combination of all of the honeypots together. So I'm just going to dismiss all of this. And if you guys see any errors, it just means, it's still collecting all of the data. But as we can see, if we filter for the last 15 minutes, and I think this virtual machine has only been running for less than 15 minutes, or the application itself, to be honest, we already have attacks. So I just want to walk you through this dashboard so you can see, so cowrie attacks, it focuses more on SSH, type of attacks. We've got some honey trap attacks and also DNA attacks. So let's have a look at the dashboard here. So here we can see the bar graph, the different type of attacks. And here's a nice world view of, which country is attacking, this virtual machine. So we can see there's 12, attacks there from, if I have a look here, it looks like somewhere in Russia. We've got some Americas trying to attack us, and also the South Americas, some attacks there. So also, if we scroll down just a little bit, we can also see, what is the attacker reputation. So we can, for example, see, IPs that is trying some dodgy stuff, they have a bad reputation. So that means, those IPs has been flagged, by the, to the ISPs. And the other, the majority of it is pretty much known attackers. They are known malicious, vectors. And here we can see what are the majority of the attacks, or the honeypots that has been attacked. We can see cowrie is the majority of it, because it's one of those memes, right? The little boy asks his dad, what does, the cloud consist of? And then the dad just replies nonchalantly, well, mostly Linux servers, and that's why, cowrie attack is quite big, because, most cloud servers are Linux based. And also what is quite cool is we can see what are the operating systems that the people are using, to actually get into or hosting these attacks from, right? So we can see, they're using Linux for the majority of it, and there's some Windows elements here as well. And we can also see some of the attacks by country. So it's China, to the United States, and Colombia. So it seems like I was quite off with my world map. I need to look at my geography skills. But that being said, we can just see, attacks by country and port. And here we can see, some of the additional attacks. We can see potential corporate privacy. We can see attempted information leak. It creates it there for us. All of these that says, error just means, just need some more time to actually, populate that data. And that's usually within the first half an hour, you'll have all of that information. And then what's quite cool is it will show you the ASN number, also the source IP addresses. That's quite cool. It will also show you the CVEs as soon as that loads. But what I think is quite interesting is to show what exactly are the attackers trying to do. So it's not just saying, well, it's using, it's trying to attack, the cowrie honeypot, via SSH. It will actually show you exactly what are they trying to execute and what is their plan. So example, you can see, someone has used an Nmap scan with the SS switch. So, I think that might be stealth mode. I'm not 100% sure, but, it will show you all of these detailed attack types as opposed to just saying, well, someone tried to brute force you on SSH, for example. So let's just go ahead. So we've got 14 cowrie attacks, 4 honey trap attacks, and, 2 DNA attacks. So let's just go ahead and refresh. And as you can see, while we just went through the dashboard, there's a lot more attacks. And if you give it more time, more and more attacks, will, be targeted towards our honeypot or, our combination of all of the honeypots that we have. And that's it, guys. That is, TPOT in a nutshell. It's quite cool to see, especially if you start out in cybersecurity, to have a look at how to deploy a honeypot, expose it to the internet, in a secure way. So it's not, on your home network. It's just on an Azure network, that is not, customer facing or, enterprise facing for your organization. It's on your own subscription, if something were to happen, it's not the end of the world, because that's what you're trying to do at the end of the day. You want to see, what are people actually trying to do out there, and people always think, well, what are the chances of people actually attacking you? Well, as you can see, there are hundreds of attacks, happening every single minute, across the world. And now you've got a bit of insight to what are they attacking, what are their goals, what commands they are using. So that being said, I hope this video was informative for you guys. If it was, remember to smash the like button and also sub to this channel, as we're going to look at a lot more open source technology, from a cloud security perspective, to see how we can enable you guys. Awesome. That's all from my side, guys. Have a good one, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.